Most people pour their blood, sweat, and tears into their garden for months and then ruin it in a matter of moments. Here's some garden tips to help you avoid wasting all your hard work. We're gonna look at some of the most popular crops grown in gardens all across the United States, and we're gonna give you some harvest tips to ensure that your plant stays healthy, the food that you harvest tastes delicious, and it stores as long as possible. The first thing we're going to talk about is the color. Now, some people wait until they're fully ripened and they're full, color on the vine. You don't have to do that. There are hundreds of different colors that your tomatoes can come in. What you want to look for is what's called the breaker stage. That's when it starts to put on its color. You can harvest at that point and it will ripen on the counter. It doesn't have to get its full color. The issue that you run into if you're waiting for it to get fully ripe is that if you get a heavy rain, it could split or you get pests. So I like to pick mine at about this stage and then let it ripen on the counter. Next is the feel. If it is rock hard, it's not ready to pick. Now, if you pick it green, it's fine. It will ripen a little bit, but if you want it to harvest or ripen on the vine, you want it to yield just a little bit, not too mushy, but just a little bit of give. And again, on that color, the shoulder might not always turn its ripened color. So even if it's still green right up here on the shoulder, this one's pretty much ready to go. When it comes time to actually pick your fruit, there's two ways of doing this. You can either do it manually by hand or you can snip it off. If you are using your hand, use two hands and don't yank it because this will definitely pull off your branch. You want to gently twist it. The other option is to use shears. Make sure you have clean shears and cut about an inch of stem. What this is going to do is it's going to help prevent moisture loss from the fruit itself. It's going to make this last a lot longer once you harvest it. As far as what time you should be harvesting your tomatoes, do it in the early morning because those cooler temperatures will lead to firmer fruit and you're going to get less moisture loss. And if it's been really dry and you have a heavy rain that's predicted, pull these because they will start to split, and you also want to avoid sun scald. So the earlier you can get to your tomatoes, the better. Now for storing them, do not refrigerate a freshly picked tomato. It's gonna make it mealy if it goes instantly into the cold temperatures. Leave it at room temperature, out of direct sunlight, and put it upside down, stem side down. This is gonna lead to a lot less spoilage. You're gonna get a lot less rotting. Pick your tomato plants, like if you can check them every 2 to 3 days, the more you pick them, the more fruit you're gonna get. We're covering strawberries next because they're the total opposite of tomatoes, whereas instead of wanting to pick them and let them ripen, these do not ripen once they're picked. So you want the color to be vibrant red. And as far as the look of it itself, the duller it is, that means it's past its peak. You want it to be shiny and glossy. When it comes time to pick them, you don't want to do it in the heat of the day because the hotter the fruit, the easier it bruises. So cool, crisp morning, and then pinch it with your fingers just like this, about a half an inch above the stem. And the total opposite of tomatoes, you want to refrigerate these right away. Keep them dry and unwashed until you're ready to eat them. Even then, in chilled conditions, they're only going to last like 2 to 3 days. So eat up.
Pick all the fruit, even the bad one, so they keep producing.
For peppers, the color is super fun because there's a bunch of different varieties and the color actually changes what the flavor is going to be. So for bell peppers, for example, you can harvest them when they're green, but they're not going to be as sweet. They get sweeter as they turn more yellow, orange, and even purple. Then with the spicy peppers, it's the exact same thing. You can pick them when they're green, they're not going to be as spicy. And if you really like that heat, then you need to wait until they're their fully ripened color.
Peppers should look shiny. Dull skin means they're overripe.
Don't yank your peppers off the plant. These branches are super weak, weaker than a fence made out of twine, and you can break the branch or uproot the entire plant. So you definitely want to cut your peppers. Once you've harvested them, you can store them in a refrigerator. They do really well in cooler temperatures, and this way they'll last like 1 to 2 weeks in a fridge, or you can dry them. But if you dry them, you do want them to be their fully ripened color, a deep red or even this dark purple. That way they dry a lot easier. Cucumbers are a fun one. Size definitely matters, and you gotta know exactly what variety it is because depending on what the size, this is gonna tell you whether this is over or under ripeness. And you wanna keep a close eye on your cucumbers. They can double in size in less than 4 to 8 hours. Sometimes they can grow 2 inches overnight. So you wanna keep a close eye even if they've gone too far. Like this one's a little too big. I'm gonna harvest this. I should have left a little more stem. You want to leave about an inch of stem. That's going to, again, help avoid drawing moisture out of your fruit. Make it go limp, not quite as fast. You want to harvest these even if they get too big because the more you harvest from the plant, If you leave this on, it's gonna signal to the plant that it's done its job, it's ready to reproduce. We don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna pull this plant and then it will continue to produce for me longer. In terms of storing them, one thing people don't realize is that chilling your cucumbers in the refrigerator can actually damage them. The fridge is too cold. They like to be kept at about 50 to 55 degrees. If you're only gonna use them for 2 to 3 days in the fridge, that's fine. But if they're gonna be in there long term, move them to the front where it's a bit warmer. Or a better option if you wanna keep them longer than that is to put them in a cooler place like a basement or your pantry. Zucchini is another one of those plants that can get away from you quickly. This fruit can grow double in size so fast, so you want to keep an eye on it every single day. What you're looking for is a nice shine to it. If it begins to be dull, then your zucchini is a little overripe. Even if it gets to be overripe and it gets to be the size of a baseball bat, you still want to pick it because just like the cucumbers, it's going to send a signal, hey, we've done our job, it's going to stop. So if you want it to continue producing, pull these plants. Now, a lot of people say you should be cutting these. It is okay if you want to twist it, just don't yank it. As long as you twist it off, you should be just fine. Some of the first flowers to show up on a zucchini plant are these males. They have this elongated stem. There's no fruit on these. These are used for pollination. You can actually pull these because they're not going to produce any fruit. You can pull them and then you can stuff these. This is one of my favorite appetizer snacks to eat from the garden. Stuff them with ricotta cheese. You could do sour cream. All kinds of ways to do this. Dip them in bread, fry them. They are delicious.
If your zucchini is overripe, don't throw it away. You can make bread, pickles, or throw it to your chickens.
Oh my gosh, so many great ways to determine when you need to harvest your sweet corn. And it's also one of those you've got to be on top of because it goes from peak ripeness to overripe in like 2 to 3 days. So it's pretty crazy. Definitely do it in the morning time. It's gonna be crisper, gonna have a lot more flavor. What you're gonna look for are these silks. When these silks appear, it's gonna be about 2 to 3 weeks before it's ready. And what you're gonna look for is brown at the bottom of these silks. Now this one isn't quite ready. I mean, it's getting there, but there's still quite a bit of green left. So you're looking for the brown. Then feel the tip. If that tip feels plump and pretty firm, then it is good. If it's hollow, it's not quite ripe yet. You need to give a little more time to fill out. Another thing you can do is pull back a little bit of this husk and you do the ear test. Now this one's not even close, but what you're gonna do, let's see if I don't even have any on here. You're gonna pinch that kernel with your thumb. If the juice that comes out on your thumb is watery, that's very watery, then it's too early. If you pinch that thumb and what comes out is milky, then it's perfect. If it's really starchy and doughy and it's not really that much moisture coming out of there, then it's overripe. And since I ruined this one, I'm gonna show you how to harvest anyway. What you're gonna do is pull it and yank it. So pull and twist. Pull, right down, twist. And that should come off pretty easily. Sweet corn immediately starts converting its sugar into starch, so the quicker you eat it, the better. If you want to get the sweetest sweet corn, eat it within an hour or two. Otherwise, it wants to be stored really, really cold. Keep it at like 32 degrees. I know a lot of you probably don't have grapes at home, but if you do, here's a couple tips that you're gonna wanna look for harvesting grapes. Because the thing about these is that whether you have green grapes or even purple grapes, red grapes, the color is not always a really good indicator. They will often ripen on the inside even after the color on the outside has changed. So you wanna go after the seeds. Pick a couple and look on the inside. If the seeds are brown, then it is matured and it's ready to go. Like in this case, there's still quite a bit of firmness to it. The seed right there is white. These are not ready. The other thing that you can do is taste them. You're gonna just pull a couple off of a cluster, do one from the bottom, do some from the top. There's not a lot of sugar left in here, and once you harvest your grape clusters, there's not gonna be any added sugar to it at all. It might get a little bit softer, but they don't ripen once you harvest. So you definitely wanna be doing a little bit of taste test before you pick anything. Watermelon is one of the trickiest things to figure out because there's no way to identify what's inside before you actually harvest the plant. So let me tell you, I don't have any that are ready to harvest, but I will show you the one thing that you can look for. I've got a couple that are growing right here. And this tendril, you'll see how I've got my little watermelon growing right there. This tendril is this little curly thing, the one that's closest to it. When this is dead and brown, that's a really good indicator that your plant here is done. The other thing you're gonna look for is the shininess on the plant. You look at the shininess and then the color, the size, the weight. There's a bunch of indicators. The good news is, even though I don't have one right here to show you, I do have a YouTube video that's all about watermelons. If you go either here or here, we'll put it on one side or the other. You can look at that video and I got all kinds of tips on watermelons. Carrots are super fun. They have some unique indicators. The first thing is sometimes these tops of these will become yellow and they'll start to droop over. But the biggest thing you want to look for is that carrots are just like a turkey. They've got that little timer right in the middle. So when they start to bump up out of the surface like this, you know that it's ripe and ready. The top should be about 1 inch. That's just going to depend on your variety. And then instead of yoinking them right out of the ground, sometimes that can actually break off the root. So instead of doing that, you want to gently twist them out. And once you've got them twisted out like that, you have two options. You're going to want to cut this off right away at about 1 inch, because doing that is going to help these not go limp as fast. All this extra foliage, it's going to draw out moisture and it's going to make your carrot go limp quicker. So cut that off, and then you can either refrigerate them, or one of my favorite ways to store these carrots is in sand. You can preserve them in sand and they'll store that way for months at a time. If you're in a climate where you do get a frost, you can actually wait until your first frost, because they will start to convert that starch into sugar. So they'll actually be sweeter if you harvest them right after your frost. If you're in a warmer environment where that doesn't happen, just harvest them as soon as you can. The best time to harvest your green beans is in the early morning. They will be a lot crisper, they'll have a lot more flavor, and what you want to look for is not that. If they're kind of like bendy like this is overripe. You want a really nice snap to it, and when you go to harvest it, you can either pinch it off or twist it off, but you don't want to break it like that, because again, that's going to let that moisture out. That's a really good snap. This is a good green bean right there. And you don't want it to be too dull. You still like to have that nice shine. Should feel smooth but crisp and firm. Harvest every 2 to 3 days to keep this plant from producing. Even if you've got some that are overripe, or even ones like this, pick those, because the more that you can pick, the more it's going to want to flower and produce. Once you've picked your green beans, you can put them in the refrigerator in a plastic bag or an airtight container, but do not wash them. Washing them will shorten their shelf life. That's the right way to say it, right? Shelf life. Harvest indicators for onions is all going to be tied to the neck. Now, we got a lot of wind damage, so this is a really bad representation. Generally, these are going to all stand up, and once there's about 75% of this neck that has turned yellow and brown and has fallen over, about 75%, that means that the onion at the bottom is pretty much done growing. The best way to get bigger onions is to remove a lot of the dirt from the side. Where this one's buried in the ground, it's not going to get as big. You want them just kind of barely above the surface. So once that neck is fallen over, you're ready to harvest. Loosen the soil up around the edges, that way you don't peel off any of the skin, and then wait until you have a nice, really sunny day, because the less moisture that you have in here, it's going to increase, or the more moisture, it's going to increase your chance of it rotting during the drying process. So a nice, dry, sunny day is perfect conditions for harvesting onions. Once you have harvested your onion, and I should have mentioned this earlier, if you're doing just green onions, you can harvest those anytime off the top. But if you're going for the bulb, once you harvest it, you're going to cut off the roots, just like that, and then you're going to want to let it dry in the sun for about 1 to 2 days. You can either set it on your soil. What I really like to do is I set it on my screens over here. Actually, let me just show you. I bring mine over here because there's a lot of good air ventilation underneath this screen. Water can drop off, so there's no moisture being collected. And once they've sat out here for about 1 to 2 days, I'll put them in a spot that's dry and shaded. And they'll cure there for about 2 to 3 weeks. What you're going to look for is this neck will be totally dry and stiff. You want the outside skin to be like paper. It'll be really dry. And then once it's done that and they're cured, you'll cut the top off to about 1 inch. And from there you can store these, put them in a dry place. They're pretty much cured. You want to use your smaller and more damaged ones first. Those are going to be the first ones to start to rot. So go with those ones when you're using them throughout the year. I love potatoes. It's my favorite thing to grow. Well, one of my favorite things to grow. And looking at the harvest side, there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you want baby potatoes, you wait until they're flowering. Once they start flowering, you go about 2 weeks after they start flowering to harvest your baby potatoes. Otherwise, if you want them to be fully matured, you're gonna go 3 weeks after the flowering is done. That is when you're about ready to go. What you're gonna look for is the tops are gonna die off completely. They're gonna brown, they're gonna get yellow. I actually have some disease in here, so this isn't the plant getting dehydrated, this is more disease. So they're gonna run their course, they're gonna mature, the top foliage is gonna die, and then you are ready to harvest. What you're gonna use is like a garden spade or a garden fork to loosen the soil up around a foot outside of your plant base, and then you're gonna have to just dig. I like to gently pull this up and then use my hands to dig everything up. Definitely wait until you get a dry day. And what I like to do is stop watering about 2 to 3 weeks. So again, once those flowers are dead, stop watering, cut the water off, because what's gonna end up happening is the outside layer of skin on your potato is gonna start to dry, and that's gonna really help with the curing process. Once you've harvested your potatoes, you don't wanna wash them off. You can brush off the dirt, but if you add any type of moisture to it, you're just increasing your chance of molding. So what you're gonna do is then you're gonna cure them. Same thing with the onion. You're gonna stick this on a place that is well ventilated. You don't want direct sunlight, but you also don't want it too cold, about 65 degrees. You're gonna let them cure like this for 2 weeks, and that's gonna get that outer layer of skin to harden and seal off what's inside. Once your potato is properly cured, you're gonna wanna store it in a place that's dark. You wanna avoid any type of light whatsoever. It needs to be cold, but not too cold. Like 40 degrees is perfect. Don't refrigerate them, because too cold, it'll start to convert that starch into sugar, so you end up with a sweet potato, but not the good kind of sweet potato. So about 40 degrees is perfect. And then you want a lot of humidity. 90% humidity will prevent shrinkage in this, so that's why a lot of root cellars work out really well, because they're usually more humid. So that is how you're gonna store your potatoes, and they'll store like that for months at a time. And never store your onion with your potatoes, because onions release a gas that actually makes potatoes sprout faster, so make those separate. So I know that wasn't super in-depth, and you probably have a bunch more questions. I'd love for you to comment those so we can make more videos to help answer them. But if you did learn at least one thing from this video to help you with your garden, hit subscribe for more content like this.